What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. We are on to day number 12, and we got some juicy stories for you today. We'll be talking about the latest Giannis Antetokounmpo rumors, and a new team has entered the chat in a way that makes it potentially possible he becomes a New York Knick. We'll break it all down because it's going to take a little bit of detective work, but you're starting to see some dots be connected, and I'm starting to wonder if the Knicks may end up being aggressive here and making a move soon. So we'll break down the latest on the Giannis Antetokounmpo front. We'll also talk about some Jets news, and they're changing their coaching staff in a major way. And there's some changes perhaps to what Aaron Glenn's role could be for the upcoming season. So we'll also break that down as well. There was a massive college basketball game last night. The Arizona Wildcats, #1 in the country, stay undefeated. They beat super freshman AJ DeBanza and BYU. I'll give you my thoughts on that game. And a QB's trade market seems to be on the rise, according to ESPN, and I want to know which team should be in on them. We'll discuss all of that and more. This is 40 Days, 40 Nights with your boy EJ Stewart. We're doing these live streams twice a day, one at 8 a.m., one at 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, on both YouTube, New Generation Media, where you can follow me, subscribe to the channel, like, support the video, support the channel in any way you can. Also on X, EJ_Stewart, where we're currently streaming live. Shout out to the folks on X. And also we are obviously on Instagram as well, Action EJ. So make sure you follow me on Instagram. Action EJ is where you'll find me. So much good stuff to get to, man. I'm excited about this show. Yesterday's show was a fun one. The last night show, the night 11. If you haven't caught night 11, go check it out. That was obviously our show from 6 p.m. last night. And again, that was a show, had some sports in it, had a lot of different other things in it. We talked some wrestling video games, we talked some Marvel, we talked some reality TV, we talked some hip hop. So that was, again, I think a show that had probably my most sensibility so far all in one show. Shout out to John Lee. He's saying good morning. Good morning, my man. How you doing? That show had all the sensibility. This one is going to be centered primarily on sports. So I think if you're someone who was like, last night was weird, I totally get it. But like I told you guys from the beginning, I was up front. Like, this show is not going to be, I call it a sports-centered show. Not sports center, like ESPN. Da-da-da, da-da-da. No. Sports-centered in that, yes, this is a show that's going to have plenty of sports conversations. Sports obviously drives this show and drives most of you guys' interest probably in me and what I've done in my career. Obviously working at Maggie and Perloff Show at Infinity Sports Network, hosting on WFAN and Infinity Sports Network, and even the stuff I've done on New Generation Media. Half of it is sports content, so I get that. But you know, this was really my first opportunity to ever kind of do my own show. Really, not ever. I have to go back to way back in the day, talking about Hunter College Radio. Shout out to WHCS. That's where I went to college in Manhattan at CUNY's Hunter College, and that was the last time I did a solo radio show. I haven't done one since. I've had partners. I've done sports talk on my podcast with Kendall. I've obviously done various different kind of shows since, and then I've filled in on the Fan and filled in on Infinity Sports Network. But in terms of like actually crafting a daily show or a weekly show or anything like that was purely mine, that was consistent, this is the first go at it. So I'm going to do everything I want, damn it. And that's going to include talking about wrestling, talking about hip hop, talking about reality TV, talking about Marvel and DC. So again, last night, if you want to check out that episode, night 11, of course, it is still up on our YouTube channel. You can also, like all of these episodes, catch it on the podcast channel. If you go to search New Generation Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts, That's Apple Podcasts, that's Spotify, that's TuneIn, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, Google Play. Search New Generation Podcast Network. And you can get not just these episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights, all of them are out there, but you can get all the other episodes of podcasts that we do on New Generation Media. So if you love the Marvel content we do, great. Hero Talk we do every week. You love the Star Wars content that I haven't quite gotten too many Star Wars stuff yet. Hopefully I'll get Shamari on, my brother who hosts that podcast, and we can talk some Star Wars on here. So they do a phenomenal Star Wars podcast, my brother Shamari and my brother Kendall Stewart, who's been on the show a couple times. That, of course, you can find also on New Generation Podcast Network. I do a wrestling podcast with Lucas Goldman. Royal Rumble's coming up. We had a pretty sick Monday night main event last night. AJ Styles, as his career appears to be coming to an end, putting on a awesome match with CM Punk that was interrupted by my guy, Finn Balor. I'm a huge Finn Balor fan. And that was pretty cool to see. I mean, obviously, interrupting a great match, but the fact that AJ Styles seems to be going out on his own terms. He put on a phenomenal match, no pun intended, with Shinsuke Nakamura. Those two guys have so much history dating back to their days in Japan. And he had that on Saturday Night Main Event. Then as we're coming to a close of his career, his last match likely being against Gunther on at Royal Rumble. He then put together this awesome match against CM Punk last night. And it was funny. I don't know if Triple H is just on these message boards, or I know he's on X. I know he's on social media. But the people were complaining, oh man, we haven't gotten a real AJ Styles CM Punk match, and CM Punk came back. Like, that really sucks that he's going to retire without that. And it seems like Triple H was like, all right, bet. You guys go out there tomorrow and tear down the house, which essentially is what the fans got last night. So that was a lot of fun. And we'll have more as we kind of get through these 40 days, 40 nights. I know we're more than 25% of the way through, which is crazy. But we'll get more recaps on wrestling. I can guarantee you Monday we will talk Royal Rumble for sure, because that's going to be obviously a massive, massive event. So we're going to get even more wrestling talk in here. It's going to be loads of fun. I'm so excited and happy that you guys have been rocking with me for these past 12 days at this point in time. It's been a thrill, and we're going to keep it moving, man, because there's nowhere to go but up. So let's keep this show going, and let's begin talking about the latest in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, because while it remains unclear whether or not he actually will be traded, dots are starting to be connected as to how his preferred destination may try to find a way to sneak him away. So these reports are coming from various different people, and it takes a little bit of follow the money kind of sensibilities to maybe figure out what's going on. And I'm not here to tell you that I know for sure, or that I think for sure that Giannis will be traded before the deadline. I've been consistent in saying that I don't think he will be. I still lean that way, but I'm also starting to feel like where I thought the Knicks wouldn't really put in a true effort to try to make a move for the deadline, I'm starting to feel like maybe that's going to happen. So this began actually days ago, and it came from Jake Fisher, who's a I don't know if he's with anybody yet. He might just be solo dolo right now, but he's a great reporter. He's been on Maggie and Perloff show, and he reported that the Portland Trailblazers had always been fond and had been interested in Mikal Bridges. Seemed extremely random. I'm like, okay, why would that come up? Why would the Knicks just dump Mikal Bridges? Not that Mikal Bridges has necessarily been like everything the Knicks hoped he would be when they traded for him. I think he's had some good moments. I think he's had some bad moments. It's been a little mixed bag, I feel like, if you want to be honest about what Mikal Bridges has been. I thought he started the year phenomenal this year. And then, like most of the team, he seemed like he really started to struggle midway through that point when they were losing all those games. He came out shooting the ball really well. So I was like, okay, it seems random, but what are we doing here? What are we talking about here? So that happened early in the weekend. Then we get more reporting yesterday. And this is where the big stuff came down. It came from one Mark Stein, who's an NBA reporter who's very plugged into NBA circles. And I go back to what I said last night when I talked about Mark Spears saying that he believed Giannis had played his last game. When Giannis said, is he going to stay a Buck? Is he going to get traded? He said, I don't know. And I started to say, okay, something weird may be happening. Does this mean that he's going to get traded in a week? Does it mean that he's going to be traded in the offseason? Like, what is going on here? And then, of course, there was reporting yesterday that Rich Paul has apparently been working behind the scenes to try to take Giannis in as representation so that he can facilitate a move to, again, his quote-unquote preferred destination. That was reported by Henry Abbott. Shout out to Henry Abbott. Okay, keep following the trail. Let's now move it to late last night. Mark Stein puts out a Substack, and it has various different details. It begins with the notion that the Knicks are maneuvering as if they don't have much interest in trading Karl-Anthony Towns. But then he says, it seems quite clear, though, that they definitely are going to explore trading Karl-Anthony Towns, which is, again, the total opposite from what we've been hearing and what, obviously Ian Bagley, shout out to him, he obviously was reporting it on SNY late last week. He said that, the Knicks were actually not actively shopping Karl-Anthony Towns, which may have been true, but things may be changing, or at the very least that people around the league seem to feel like that the Knicks definitely could be open to a move if the right move is there. This was the exact wording from Mark Stein's. Behind the scenes, Knicks officials have tried to downplay any notion that Karl-Anthony Towns could be traded during the season amid New York's and Towns' January struggles. However, a belief persists among some rival teams that Towns is in play to some degree, or that the Knicks, at the very least, have tried to get a sense of what his trade market could be. I don't know why rival teams would just... Oh, there's a reason why to say things just to cause dissension, and it feels like there is something odd going on with the Knicks locker room and with Karl-Anthony Towns. But, so yes, there is a reason to just throw out trade rumors, like, I'm hearing they're trying to trade him. But, again, okay, let's keep following this trail. So let's continue this Mark Stein report. So that's where it began, but it didn't end there. He then also added that another concept that keeps coming up rumbles that the Knicks have explored pathways to try to acquire Portland's Jrue Holiday. Portland. Remember, I mentioned late last week, early this weekend, that Portland was interested in Mikal Bridges randomly out of nowhere. I was like, what is that? What would that potentially have to do with anything involving the Knicks? Okay, Knicks are interested in trying to get Jrue Holiday. He also continues, there are at least two clear reasons why New York would have interest in a player who has both helped the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics win championships this decade. Number one, the presumption that acquiring Holiday, if there's a way, would make the Knicks an even more attractive destination to Holiday's former Bucks teammate, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And two, New York is believed to hold a long-standing fondness for Holiday as a potential backcourt mate complement to Jalen Brunson. There you go. That is kind of where now everything starts to come into play and start to make sense. You hear the Jake Fisher saying that Mikal Bridges is someone that Portland's interested in, why they think they could have him or want him. Why would they think that? Then you follow this whole thing. Knicks and Karl-Anthony Towns, this ain't over yet. We'll have to see how this is going to go. The Knicks, at least people around the NBA, seem to think that they definitely may trade this guy. And then it comes back to something to look into is the fact that the Knicks are interested in Jrue Holiday, and they are interested in him in part because they feel like he is someone that could attract Giannis Antetokounmpo. So now, to me, what you're seeing here is what I kind of have been saying since the beginning of this entire ordeal, which I guess dates back to last summer. I've said it consistently, and I'll keep saying it. I'm going to adjust my camera. It's a little... There you go. There you go. I want to jump my camera. A little bit too much stuff on the other side. No, this goes back to what I've been saying since this whole ordeal began, which was the only way the Knicks could make a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo was to include the third team. There just was no way with the assets that they have or the lack thereof that they could make a move, because the Bucks are going to want considerable draft compensation in order to make any kind of move for Giannis happen, and the Knicks don't have any. To be simple, like they traded most of their tradable picks, or almost all of their tradable picks, to the Brooklyn Nets for Mikal Bridges. So the only way to make a trade for Giannis was going to be to try to recoup some of those picks. The interest from the Bucks on the Blazers on the Bridges one thing was that they felt like they could potentially, because they're at a draft pick surplus, that they could use some of those picks that they had from the Bucks trade to get Jrue Holiday. But remember, there's been a lot of weird things going on That not the Bucks trade. I'm sorry. The trade for Dame, when they traded Dame Lillard. So it was a Drew Holiday trade, but it was kind of weird. Remember, he ended up going to the Celtics. Now he's back on the Blazers. Drew Holiday's been bouncing around. His career's been kind of weird of late. But with the trade for Dame Lillard, they got these draft picks. The thought process is we could give the Bucks their draft picks back, which the Bucks draft picks are now extremely valuable because the Bucks are going to be entering a phase without Giannis Antetokounmpo where they will likely be a team that is a lottery team. That is their future most likely. So if that's going to be the case, the Bucks look at it and saying, well, we see a piece in New York that we like, that we think could be useful, and the Bucks are a team that could maybe want to use their draft picks back. Maybe we could make this happen where, okay, Knicks, you need picks to somehow get back to Milwaukee. We, for some reason, seem to like Mikal Bridges, and the Bucks want draft picks. And you also want Drew Holiday, who's on our team. You see where we're going here with this? You see how all this is starting to come together? You see how all this begins to make sense as to how you potentially get your way to a Giannis trade? I still believe for this to still work out, it's going to be contingent on Giannis also saying, I don't want to play anywhere but New York. Because what we also saw was, this was, I think, on CBS HQ. Shout out to Sam Quinn. I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of Sam Quinn. I like guys who watch as much ball as he does. So he's not someone who's just helicoptering in, even though he's a national writer. But also that he's like 10 toes down on his takes. But one of the things that he said that I think is something to watch is, because what we've been seeing as well, something else that was being reported yesterday, is that the Golden State Warriors, this was according to Sam Vecini, and this was less reporting, more just like, because Sam Vecini, of course, is the Athletics mock draft guy, excellent draft expert. He was saying that, considering the draft capital the Warriors have, which is they have everything. Remember, I mentioned that when we were talking about the Jimmy Butler situation, is that the Warriors absolutely have all their picks. They have no picks that they're going to lose, and they're an older team. They, if they want to, you would think would be a team that would be in play, and they would be a team that could be aggressive and try to get Giannis this offseason, maybe even this trade deadline. And then Sam Quinn jumping onto that, saying, listen, I think that there's only 3 teams that can realistically make a trade for Giannis. Miami, Golden State, and New York. He said most teams, if Giannis stands 10 toes down and say, I do not want to play for you, I want to play for the Knicks, that will probably scare off most NBA teams. Sam Quinn says that will not scare off the Miami Heat, who have been desperate for a superstar and desperate to make something happen. And they have one of Milwaukee's favorite sons, I think. I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch. But they do have one of Milwaukee's favorite sons in the NBA in Tyler Hero, who is from Milwaukee. So they, to me, would be another team to watch. But this thing is starting to cook up. This thing that was, I felt like was kind of dead. And what I figured, to me, was an injury that happened that I thought really was going to put the kibosh on this, just because I've mentioned a bunch. And I still, even despite hearing these rumors about the Knicks and how maybe a potential deal could come in place, I still have grave doubts about Giannis' health because of the calf injury. But I thought because of the calf injury, you probably wouldn't see a Giannis deal until the offseason, because he's going to miss a month now. It's January. He could be back, in theory, well in time for the playoff push. But this is a calf injury he's been dealing with for, basically the whole season. I would like to have him chill and really rest that thing until he takes the floor. And the last thing I want is him, pushing it to play super intense playoff basketball. But the tea leaves are there now. And the third team that I feel like the Knicks needed to get into this thing has arrived, potentially, with the Portland Trailblazers. If they are indeed interested in Mikal Bridges, and they might be willing to give up Drew Holiday, which, by the way, that's the last thing about this. There's also reason for the Blazers to want to give up on Drew, not give up on Drew Holiday, that's what we said, but to give up Drew Holiday, rather. There's plenty of reasons for that. We kind of forget. Damian Lillard is on this team. Again, I know if you're not following the Trailblazers, they've actually been pretty good this year. They're 23-24. Denny Avdia has had a phenomenal season. I picked him to be an all-star this year, and I think he will make it, though it's going to be very tight in the Western Conference. The Blazers have low-key been kind of good. Like, they're a 500 team. They've competed, even though they had the Chauncey Billups fiasco to start this year. They've been a good team. And they've competed in a tough Western Conference, and they have an opportunity to make the play-in and potentially make the playoffs. And one of the reasons why is Jrue Holiday. He's still having a really good season. He's averaging 15 points. We know he's a phenomenal defensive player. He's shooting 45% from the field, 36% from three. 36% is okay, but he's shooting a bunch of threes, so he's getting them up. So 36 on almost 7 threes a game on high volume is pretty good. So he's still a productive player despite his age. He is a little older. He's 35 years old. So that is the one thing. But remember, like I said, you're going to have Damian Lillard eventually join this team next year. And then you're going to have a real decision about what is your backcourt for the future. Because you're going to have Dame, you're going to have not Jrue Holiday. Is Scoot Henderson still going to be in the mix? Actually, a rookie that has played really well for them this year has been Caleb Love, who from Arizona. He played at UNC for all those years. He's come into the NBA, and he's actually been pretty good for them. So they're gonna make a decision, I think, pretty fast. Hey, are we still a team that's kind of trying to be young? And also, we got to make room for this all-time Blazer legend, maybe the most famous Blazer in the history of the franchise, to come in and kind of start his retirement tour, which I think is probably what we're looking at with Dame Lillard, considering his age. Is Jrue Holiday going to fit into all that? Does he make sense playing next to Damian Lillard? Or would it make sense to have another long wing who can defend, who can guard ones? Because you start to become a little small if you're saying we're going to have Holiday, Love, Dame, and Scoot Henderson, who hasn't played a game this year, but Scoot Henderson also on the team next year. You start to figure out, say, where are the wings besides Shaedon Sharpe and obviously Avdia, and they have Kamara too, who's been really good too for them this year. Toumani Kamara, who's a great defensive player, a young player from France. All right, but you're lacking some size. You're lacking some length in the backcourt. So that is where I think Mikal Bridges comes in. So it makes a lot of sense. Can it happen? Will it happen? I think it's going to take, again, the Bucks are going to be the one that are holding the cards. Because I think, let's say everything works out great. Let's say you're able to recoup I think, realistically, maybe 2 first-round picks from the Bucks. And you send them Bridges, and they're able to offload the Jeremy Grant contract, with something they definitely want to do. And you get Holiday in return. Is 2 first-round picks plus whatever this Washington pick is going to be this year, which is probably going to be more of a second because they're still trying to tank. Is that going to be enough to get Giannis? I don't know. I still don't know. If I'm the Bucks, I still would say no. But again, these situations with these players, it's not always the team that holds the cards. A lot of times, it's the players that hold the cards, and they will say, well, I'm not going to go do this, or I'm not going to do that, and I only want to go to this place. But what I keep saying before, as I'll keep saying again, is what we've seen in recent years is this idea that the players have completely all the power is starting to dissipate a little bit. We had 2 major superstars that wanted out of their teams. And they were there for a long time, and they both made it extremely clear what their preferred destination was. We had Damian Lillard, who, when he was with the Portland Trail Blazers the first time, said, I want Miami and only Miami. And they said, we're sending your ass to Milwaukee. Like it or not, that's where you're going. And apparently he was devastated because he really wanted to go to Miami. He really wanted to play with Pat Riley, and it's Miami. So I totally get why you want to go there. So that was the first example. Second example, Donovan Mitchell. Knicks know this all too well. Now, he was not kicking and screaming the way Damian Lillard was, but considering the guy seemed to want to spend every waking moment of his entire summer showing how much he appreciates New York City. The guy was like the mayor of New York City that summer. He was at every Mets game. He's a big Mets fan. He was at every New York event. He was at the White Party hosted by Michael Rubin. I mean, this guy was all over the city. It was like, all right, well, he's making it very clear to everybody where he wants to go. And it seemed like for a long time, Knicks were really the only team that was going to ante up whatever Utah wanted to get him. Turned out, Utah didn't like the offers Knicks were giving them. So they said, we're sending your ass to Cleveland. And that's where he still is, and that's where he's probably going to remain. He just signed long term. So this is where we're gonna see how this is gonna work out for the Bucks. Like, are they gonna play hardball in this situation? I am of the belief that Giannis wants to be a New York Knick. I am of the belief that that is really the only team he would want to play for. I think he'd probably be okay with playing in Miami. I think he'd probably be okay with playing with the Warriors. But I think he wants to play in New York. I think he wants to play with the Knicks. This whole Giannis New York connection has been here for years. The guy's season ended last year, and I swear to you, it seemed like the next day he was in New York City. Like, they lost in the playoffs, devastating fashion to the Pacers, where they kind of get embarrassed. Giannis wants to fight John Halliburton, right? I think that's his name, Tyrese Halliburton's dad. He's saying, oh, be respectful, and this is not how you celebrate a win. And he got his ass. And most guys going to Cancun, he went to the Big Apple. So I am convinced he wants to be a Knick. The question is going to be, if you're a Milwaukee, how do you handle the exit of the greatest player of your franchise's history? And I feel comfortable saying that. I know Kareem was there. Kareem didn't play as long with the Bucks as Giannis did. So I think that would be the edge why I say Giannis is their greatest player. How do you handle it? Do you say, you know what, you've been a great player, multiple time MVP, you won a championship here for the first time since Kareem was playing here. Let's work with the Knicks. Let's get something going. It may not be the most we can get, but as a thank you for what you've done for the organization, we're going to do a solid and get you to New York. They have no obligation to do that. There's no, again, the Blazers, you would think, of all the organizations that probably should do a solid to a guy, Dame Lillard and the Blazers seem to be the example. Where it's like, okay, this guy was loyal. He was very anti-super team. He played injured. He was a superstar. He really embodied the city, embraced the city. And, okay, your team has decided that you're going to rebuild, which is not something he wanted because he wants to compete for a championship. That seemed like the example where you say, okay, you want to go to Miami. Is it as good an offer as what we're going to get from Milwaukee? No, but you know what? We'll make the offer because we feel like it's the right thing to do. Again, that didn't happen. So I'm actually fascinated the fact that the Bucks were actually involved with that. How does that influence them here? Because they benefited from the fact that they said, no, we're going to ante up and we'll give you more than the Miami Heat are offering in order to get Damian Lillard. And it worked. Are they going to say, hey, listen, like, Gabos, game ain't based on sympathy, my man. Like, we actually got you Dame Lillard when against all odds, in part because a team was willing to play ball with a place that he didn't necessarily want to go to. We're going to play the exact same way because this is a business at the end of the day, and it is all about ensuring our future as an organization. And their future doesn't entail taking Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns and saying, all right, let's run it with these guys and see what happens. I think they know that the tank mode is going to be where they have to go. And in order to really facilitate that tank and facilitate a real rebuild, they're going to have to get some real draft capital. And, it's interesting because of what happened with the Luka Doncic trade. I'm curious just what is the market for a superstar player, because the Rudy Gobert trade effed up the market. I mean, just people will keep saying, oh, the Knicks screwed up with the whole Mikal Bridges trade, and in large respect, you could definitely make that case, considering they are in a position where they don't have those draft picks at all. They get rid of all of them. But I will go back to, it all began with that stupid Rudy Gobert trade. Like, Rudy Gobert getting traded for what I believe was 5 first-round picks set a market for, okay, like, what I call kind of star role players. Like, Gobert is a star role player. He's kind of a butt of every joke. We all get the Rudy Gobert stuff. I'm not going to make this inside the NBA, Shaq roasting session. I'm not about that. Rudy Gobert has value. He's helpful to teams, and he's rim protector. There's reasons why he's a winning player when it comes to regular season success and things of that nature. But he's a role player, still a role player. Regardless, you can say that I think I probably was the nicest anybody's been to Rudy Gobert, but nonetheless, he's a role player. When those guys started going for 4 or 5 first-round picks, it screwed up the market. Because now you're saying, okay, well, if he's worth 4 or 5 first-round picks, then what's Mikal Bridges worth? And what's all these other players worth? There's so many guys that actually didn't end up getting traded or stayed on these teams for way too long because teams just stayed on a price that was unreasonable. So now the Luka Doncic trade, I wonder if that changes the market because Luka Doncic goes for basically almost no draft compensation. It's just Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, I believe, 1 first-round pick, I think, when in that trade. I mean, does that adjust this? Where teams are saying, hey, listen, like, Luka Doncic went for 1, man. I'm not giving you 5 first-round picks for Giannis Antetokounmpo. He probably deserves it. He deserves it way more than Mikal Bridges or Rudy Gobert. I would expect that the Bucks are going to say, ignore what happened with the Luka Doncic trade. That is not the market for a superstar in the prime of his career. But we won't really know until this trade eventually happens. I think it will happen. Again, my hunch is the teams that have the trade capital, the draft capital to get Giannis will get him. The other thing that I didn't mention that Henry Abbott report from yesterday was, because there was a lot in there, was that, I mentioned Alex Saratis. Again, apologies. That name is not easy to pronounce. It's a weird spelling, so I hope I'm getting that right. But I'm just going to call him Alex for now. Giannis, just like we only call him Giannis. I actually can say Antetokounmpo pretty well. But Saratis is giving me hell right now. But his agent Alex, let's call him Alex. The Giannis agent Alex, he apparently has been getting calls nonstop about, yo, would Giannis want to come here? So it's not like these other teams are just being wallflowers, which is what we've heard. We've heard this for a little while now. Not these other teams being wallflowers, being like, oh, I guess Giannis just wants to be a Knick, and we're just going to... No, they've been working this thing nonstop. Before the Bucks, they've even really put Giannis on the market still. He technically still isn't on the market. They're still working, saying, hey, what can we do to convince Giannis to want to come here? And to be honest, here's what I'll say. The Knicks' best chance, I think, of putting together their best offer is probably in the offseason, because this is going to become a complicated move, potentially, if it's going to happen midseason. But I also feel like be careful taking this to the offseason if you really do want Giannis. Because I think once you get to the offseason, now we're not in this race to make this deal happen immediately, right? Because now right now you're on the clock. Yeah, February 5th is the deadline. So teams are working, and Giannis could just say, I'm not talking to these people. And the Bucks could just say, I'm not talking to these people, and then change their mind the very last second. And then now you're on the clock, and maybe you feel like you have to make a move immediately, and then maybe, something happens because the Bucks don't want to be in a position where they have this uncomfortable situation where Giannis has publicly requested a trade or done something, extreme that has made the situation in Milwaukee maybe untenable. They could be in a spot where they say, okay, in this situation, let's just get him out of here. Knicks, give us something that's respectable, and we'll just move on. If they get to the offseason, like we saw with Dame Lillard, like we saw with Donovan Mitchell, where those were offseason trades, and they say, we have no rush. What are we rushing for? You think you're going to just sneak some BS through us? Say, oh, please give us a trade here? No. We're going to take our time. We're going to talk to all these other teams. We're going to ante up this price, and we're going to get the best deal possible. That is where I think the Knicks, if you really want Giannis, that's where I would be worried. Yes, you may be able to get the deal in place that makes sense in terms of the best offer they could put together, just because, again, the timing that it would take to put that together will be there in the offseason. But these other teams also are going to have plenty of time to put together offers and be creative with their draft situations, their cap situations, and they are all working from a position of strength in the sense that most of these teams didn't give up 4 first-round picks for one player. That's just the reality of this. But the Giannis stuff is definitely heating up, man. If I'm gonna make a prediction here, I'm gonna say I don't think he gets traded still. But I think that what you're seeing, and they're trying to dance around it, these various different reports, I think the Knicks are working like crazy to try to make this thing happen. That's just the gut feeling I have. There's too many tea leaves, there's too many Drew Holiday here, Mikal Bridges there, Cat here, Rich Paul here, who's Giannis' agent? These are all things that they're bubbling up all at the same time in a way that makes it feel like the public statements they'll make and the statements they're making to people that they're not really seriously considering this stuff, I think is for them to try to survive this next week, essentially. This next week is going to be something that's going to be a very dramatic, stressful time. And it's one of those times for a team that I still think they feel like they have championship aspirations. They don't want to completely splinter and fracture their team through a trade cycle. Now, that very well may happen anyway, but I think they're trying their best to avoid that. So they're trying to keep it quiet. They're trying to talk to these teams. I mentioned last week that report from Popper about how they were talking to, again, the Hornets, talking to the Grizzlies, talking to all these teams about Karl-Anthony Towns. That also could have been, and I said before, I will be totally open to just trading Towns, just period. Just trade them, consolidate those pieces into something else that makes more sense for this team. That's where I'm at with Cat. Cat, I'm basically out now at this point. But that also could have been them working the phones about, hey, the Bucks, we've tried to make a trade here. They don't want Cat. Do you want Cat? What can we do to give you Cat? We'll take maybe a pick or two, and we'll try to work this thing out. There's things going on here, man. All that to say, is it the right move? Still, I think there's still a question mark of, is it the right move? Is it the right move to give up Bridges and Cat and whatever else you may have to give up? Because I don't think it's going to be just those guys. If it is, then I think you're doing it in a heartbeat at this point. But my hunch is that it's not going to be. That you're going to have to include Deuce McBride. That you may have to include a Mitchell Robinson. I keep saying OG Anunoby, in my opinion, and I know his play's been a little bit up and down. I still feel like he should be borderline untouchable. I'm not trading. I don't think the Knicks win a championship if he's not on the team. I think any iteration that includes Giannis and the Knicks, if OG is still not on the team, I think that's not a good look. So that's going to be the big question: is it actually still the right move to make? And to be honest, I don't think that's necessarily a given at this point. So let's keep it going here, man. Very fascinating stuff with the Knicks and Giannis, and we'll keep our eyes and ears peeled on whatever else comes out. But, man, that is going to definitely be a huge, huge story to follow in this next week as we get closer and closer to that February 5th trade deadline. But I want to shift gears here and also talk about New York Jets here, because there have been some major coaching changes with the Jets staff over the course of, I guess, 4 or 5 days at this point. And when you're learning more about what the Jets coaching situation is going to look like coming into this upcoming season. So you may have seen, we didn't talk about it, I wasn't necessarily expecting to go Jets today, but more and more stuff keeps coming out. So you may have saw late last week, the Jets had their own version of Red Wedding. They fired 5, 6 staffers on their coaching staff. A bunch of guys are out of there. It was way past Black Monday, obviously, and well past the time that typically these kind of major coaching overhauls would happen, which again speaks to just like the unorthodox way in which Aaron Glenn's running this thing. But they made a bunch of firings. We already know that defense coordinator was already fired during the year, Steve Wilkes. But they fired all these offensive staffers, all these people. They said, get the hell out. We then started to learn over the weekend, and this happened early Sunday morning, like literally around like past midnight, that the Jets were interested in bringing in Frank Reich. Which is like, okay, Frank Reich, he's a former NFL head coach. But what is he coming in to do? The Jets did not fire their offensive coordinator in Taylor Angstrom. So what, Frank Reich going to come in and be a quality control coach? Like I think somebody who is going to be, someone was a former head coach who just was coaching in college, who just coached obviously 2 teams in the NFL, I would think that he's not coming in to be the assistant running backs coach. So what is going on here? Apparently the Jets are interested in Frank Reich being added as the new play caller for the team. Which again, begs the question. The Jets have an offensive coordinator. What the hell is going on? And then this is all according to Connor Hughes, apparently, and Zach Rosenblatt's had it down as well. And this is obviously more and more details are coming out about what the Jets are doing here with their staff. But apparently, Tanner Angstrom will not be calling plays next year. That is the expectation. That is the expectation from Angstrom. That is the expectation of the Jets. That he won't be calling plays. But they're also making it clear that he's not fired. That he will remain on the staff. What's the point of having an offensive coordinator that isn't a play caller when someone else on the staff is calling plays? I have no idea. It seems that only seems to happen like mid-season when teams are in crisis mode, like when the Eagles, for example, like they had to pull play calling duties from somebody and they give it to like remember Matt Patricia was like a defensive special assistant, but he was like calling the defense at the end of the year because they couldn't stand the other guy that was calling the defense. Like that seems to be the kind of move we only do in desperation, where it's like, hey, like we're not gonna fire the guy mid-season, let him keep his check, let him keep working for us. We'll fire him at the end of the year, but and we're gonna keep him the offensive player. We're not gonna demote his status, but he's not calling the plays. That to me is something that typically happens in the regular season. I've never seen a situation where you actually have an offensive coordinator that's still on your staff, and he, according to reports, may remain offensive coordinator. And it's not a situation, again, where the head coach is calling plays. That's another situation where we see that all the time, where there's an offensive coordinator, quote unquote, but someone calling the plays. Like Kyle Shanahan is, obviously calling the plays, but he has, an offensive play caller. Offensive coordinator, rather. Like, Aaron Glenn ain't calling no offensive plays. So, again, this is a weird dynamic. Angstrom, apparently not calling plays anymore, but will stay on the staff. Frank Reich is being recruited to call plays for the Jets next year. And I guess I said this, I talked about it on the fan a little bit. I don't quite understand why they have so much issue with what Angstrom did last year. The Jets offense was not good. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it was good. But I'll be honest, I think after seeing what I saw the previous year with Nate Hackett, and that was with way more talent, I think the Jets had a more functional offense at many stretches of the year than they even had last year with Aaron Rodgers. Like, the Jet offense didn't get rolling until the end of the year, basically, with Aaron Rodgers. Like, Angstrom was able to get a pretty solid running game going. Just seeing the play calling and the concepts and the ideas, I thought that their approach to everything seemed right. They just didn't have good players. And their defense was putting them in 10, 15 point, 20 point holes almost immediately as the game started. So, Angstrom getting his play calling duty stripped, I feels a little like a panic move to me. He's a young OC. It was his first go around. You gave him Justin Fields, who just, no pun intended, could not see the field and would not throw the football. What's he supposed to do? I think the Jets offense kind of ended up becoming what it was, and you had to live with that. I don't see like how at no point in time did I look at last season and say, man, we got to change this OC. I thought Angstrom was doing a good job despite the record because of how bad that team was. At least I saw an offensive line that looked functional. At least I saw a running game that when they weren't down 15, 20 points actually showed they could run the ball. I like his coaching tree. I like that he comes from the Detroit Lions coaching tree. I like that he comes from Ben Johnson. Like, I want more of that. I want to see that when they actually get talent. So and then you're bringing in Frank Reich, who had his play calling duties taken away as a head coach. Like, he was with the Panthers and they had no C and it wasn't working out. And then he said, okay, I'll take over play calling. And he was worse. He hasn't called plays in a while. He was obviously with the Stanford Cardinals last year. Now, I'll be clear. I'm not going to really judge him harshly on a 4-8 Stanford season. He came as an interim coach. It was to do a solid for Andrew Luck. The team was supposed to be horrendous this year. They actually weren't as bad as I think people thought they were going to be. They actually were pretty respectable in some games. They beat Cal at the end of the year, which was obviously their biggest game of the year. So I'm not going to go crazy and say, oh my God, he was a 4-8 coach at Stanford. That's not quite fair. But I'm just going off his NFL resume. Coming off that Panther job looked like a retirement job. Like some coaches at the end, they take a job that they know probably is not really going to work out, but you take it and see what happens. And usually you get paid, you get fired in a year or two, and that's kind of the end of your career because of how poor things went. Like, no NFL team's going to look at you and say, oh, we need to bring that guy in after what he did with the Panthers. Like, that's what it looked like to me. Look at Frank Reich. I'm not sure many other teams would have hired him as a head coach. He took the Panthers job when no one else would want to take it. He went there. It was a complete, utter disaster. And then he got fired. And I said, okay, that's probably the end of his career. And I kind of think him coaching Stanford was kind of part of that, too. It was like, yeah, he's coaching Stanford because, like, that's probably the only place he could be a head coach at this point. Now he's going to be the Jets whatever. I don't even know what his title is going to be. It's not going to be apparently it may not be offensive coordinator. So I don't even know what his title is going to be. So we're just bringing in a guy to come in and call plays who the last time he did it, he stunk. And by the way, there were folks at that time who were saying, hey, listen, like, okay, Frank Reich, it didn't work out with what happened with the Panthers. And listen, it's the Panthers. And nobody could get Bryce Young to play good football, so you can't hold that against him. But then I just watched homie from the Panthers right now go there, and Bryce Young hasn't looked like a star, but Dave Canales has him looking respectable. He got him to the playoffs. Bryce Young may have had arguably the best game of his career in the playoffs against the Rams. So I don't miss me with no coach could have done anything with this Carolina Panthers team and this quarterback Bryce Young. He's just too terrible. Miss me with that. I saw another coach come in and make Bryce Young not look like a complete mess. And Bryce Young deserves credit too. Of course, he improved his game, but off of that, that's why I gotta go off and say, okay, what do I think of Frank Reich as a play call? Let me look back at his last film. I gotta watch 2023 Panthers when he was 1-10 as a head coach. That's what I gotta watch. That's what Aaron Glenn is excited about. That's what he's going off of. The moves that you see here scream desperation. He probably should be desperate. Let me be clear. I think that if the Jets have another really tough season, he will not have a job. So I think he's turning every stone to try to figure out what do I need to do to fix this team in a year. Newsflash for Aaron Glenn, brother, I don't think you're able to fix this thing in a year. I don't. I don't think that there's the draft picks that are there, despite all the picks that they got. I'm really excited about their future with that. I don't think the free agents are out there. I don't think the guys in the trade market are out there to fix this in a year. Can they win 6 to 7 games next year? Maybe. Let's see what they do. Let's see what they do. Let's see if they get number 2 receiver. Let's see who they draft. Let's see who they have playing quarterback. But to be honest, I keep talking about the offense. Really, the defense was probably the worst Jets defense I've ever seen this year, and that's saying a whole hell of a lot. But typically, the Jets, when they've been bad, it's typically been, well, their offense is just completely inept, which was the case for parts of the season. But their defense, they could not stop anybody after they traded Quentin Williams. And they weren't great even before they had Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner gone. But when they got rid of those guys, they had one good game against the Falcons, and that was it. Teams were just walking up and down the field on the New York Jets. So, to be honest, the defense to me is way more of an issue than even the offense. Gary Wilson didn't play the second half of the season, so I know he's a star. And I know he helps make things easier for other guys on the team. So you got to use that kind of with a grain of salt. And Gary Wilson's here. Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner, they ain't coming back. And by the way, I don't want him back. I'm not even mad that it's happening. What I'm saying, though, is that you're not going to replace that kind of production in just one offseason with rookies. Is it possible? Maybe, but it's unlikely. 2 all-pro guys. So if you're the Jets and you're Aaron Glenn, the 2023 Carolina Panthers head coach coming in to call offensive plays, this is not something that's going to excite me. I would 100% rather see what Tanner Armstrong could do after a year of experience, a year of learning what it means to be an offensive play caller and an offensive coordinator, getting to watch film all throughout the summer to get ready for this upcoming season, add wrinkles to an offense that he was just introducing to his team. I don't want this. I don't know many Jets fans that want this. This seems like a totally weird situation to me. My guy Rob Ray in the chat saying psycho stuff happening with the Jets. Psycho. You look psycho when you're being desperate. Nothing screams psychosis more than desperation. I think Aaron Glenn is desperate. I think he's looking at a situation, realizing that it's going to be very tough for him to keep his job next year. He's going to have to pull out all the stops, which is why the other thing that's now being reported as well, as they apparently zero in on Aaron Glenn, is they've also been very interested in Wink Martindale to be their defensive coordinator. Wink Martindale obviously was the Giants' defensive coordinator, and he had this terrible relationship with Brian Daboll, but he was a pretty respected DC for the Giants. Despite their numbers not being the greatest, they were a team that, they kind of punched above their weight class, let's say, in terms of how to describe Wink Martindale's Giants defenses. And then he was a good defensive coordinator, obviously, for Michigan these past few years, and then previously the Baltimore Ravens. But then whether a deal happens seems to be very up in the air, because what defensive coordinators that have been interviewing the Jets are learning, apparently, is that Aaron Glenn wants to call the defense. So they're doing this search where they're calling all these defensive coordinators in because they want to get a new DC, which they're going to have to get a new DC because of just how everything went. But apparently Aaron Glenn wants to call the defense. So if you're a defensive coordinator who wants to get back into the NFL or get promoted within the NFL. You're saying, oh, great, I got this, really excited. I got this opportunity to come in and get my shot at the NFL. Or if you're someone like Wink Martindale, I get to get back in the NFL and see what I can do. And then he says, yeah, come in, be my defensive coordinator, but I'm going to call the plays on Sunday. You're probably sitting in the interview like, what? Why did I even come here then? Why would I go to one of the worst teams in the NFL who had one of the worst defenses of all time, accept the job as defensive coordinator, but then not call plays? I mean, how would that make any sense for a veteran defensive coordinator? Like, again, like if it's someone like a young hotshot guy that hasn't coached before and Glenn wants to have them in, all right, that's one thing. Because I'll say this, and I've said this before, and I'm going to be very clear. I, in theory, don't have a problem at all with Aaron Glenn wanting to call plays. At all. And I'll tell you why. I've said this on the fan, and I'll say it here. I have no idea if Aaron Glenn can do the CEO coach thing. He presented himself in his first year that he wanted to be the CEO type head coach. That he wanted to have a veteran defensive coordinator in Steve Wilks. He had a new offensive coordinator in Tanner Angstrom, but he was going to give the offense to Tanner. And he was going to be the guy that was going to oversee everything. So game management, player relations, and overall strategy going into games. That was going to be his thing. There was zero evidence that he knows any idea on how to do any of that stuff. I mean, the Jets consistently seem not prepared. They consistently failed clock games of situational football type situations. There was no indication that Aaron Glenn knows what he's doing as a CEO type head coach. Now, could he learn in a year? Could he have said, okay, that was my first year, I learned a lot, now I'll come into next year and have a better approach? Possibly. But there was no signs that he was good at that. I do know Aaron Glenn can call a good defense. That is something I've seen. I saw him in Detroit. It wasn't like Detroit with 85 Bears. But I saw a defense that was aggressive, that turned you over, that hit you hard, that had an attitude. And he was calling the defense. That was very clear. He was the guy. It was not Dan Campbell, obviously. He's a former tight end. So he was not coming in saying, oh, do this and that and call play. He was calling the plays. In fact, one of the things I talked about and why I was excited about Aaron Glenn being the Jets head coach was because of all the guys on Hard Knocks that impressed me from years and years ago. We all talk about Dan Campbell crying and stuff. I actually was really impressed by Aaron Glenn. Like the competitive atmosphere that he created for that defense in that first year, that was awful. But I loved his energy. And I loved, the competitiveness that they have in that practice field. And I said, yeah, that's what you need to bring to One Jets Drive. I want to see that kind of competitiveness and that kind of attitude and that kind of nastiness. He impressed me with that. So he comes in, he brings Steve Wilks as defensive coordinator. And to me, what happened was he got the roles all effed up this first year. What should have happened was he should have called the plays, and he should have had a Steve Wilks type on the staff. It didn't have to be Steve Wilks, but anybody on the staff, some kind of former head coach, to help him with the CEO type stuff. So he doesn't lose complete sight of the CEO type stuff. And then during games on Sunday, he can be assisted with, hey, we need to call timeout here. Hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z here. Hey, so that he can, but he to say I'm going to take my hand off the defense when I know that's what you can do, give it to someone in Steve Wilks who was embattled in San Francisco. I think he kind of got a raw deal, but he was nonetheless embattled in San Francisco and hasn't really called a defense in terms of a way in which that people were saying that he was doing a good job in a long time. Steve Wilks shouldn't have had that role. Steve Wilks should have been your right hand role. He should have been the bench coach type role in baseball, where he's again helping you with game situations. Not he's calling the defense. You should have been calling the defense. So I don't actually have that much an issue with that side of it. I'm way more concerned about Frank Reich being the OC than Aaron Glenn calling the defense. What is strange to me, though, is, again, this concept that Aaron Glenn and the Wink Martindale thing is, like, up in the air, in part because he may just decide to make Chris Harris the defensive coordinator, but let himself call the plays. That there's this thought that he actually wants to call the plays. That to me, is bizarre. And I'll read this quote here. This is from Connor Hughes from yesterday. The Jets and Wink Martindale are working through things per sources. Time will tell if this leads to or breaks a potential partnership. Two sides have been conversing in varying degrees for quite a while. I guess I have to click this to make sure. Where am I? Martindale going into his visit on Saturday was considered far and away the front runner. This hasn't fallen apart, he puts in parentheses, yet. But I don't think he's as much of a guarantee as it seemed a few days ago. Again, we'll see. A lower profile coordinator with Glenn calling the plays is possible. Coordinating candidates who spoke with Jets per sources came away from those conversations believing Glenn wanted to call the plays on defense. There's growing belief around the league circles that Chris Harris, DC, and Aaron Glenn calling plays is the direction the Jets are warming up to. Again, the only thing that bothers me about this is again, the approach seems so weird and so disjointed. Do you want to call the defense or do you not want to call the defense? Like, stop wasting coordinators' time with calling them saying, hey, come here, but by the way, I'm going to take your job and I'm going to be the one that's doing all the work. And you're just going to be a figurehead. And if this doesn't go well, then what's going to happen is I'm going to have to give you the role probably, or either I'll get fired or you'll have to take over. You'll have to fix a broken defense. And regardless of how this all goes down, by the end of the year when we're all fired, people are going to look back on your resume and say, what did you do? Wait, you were the Jets defensive coordinator? You mean that terrible-ass team that was giving up all those touchdowns? Like there seems to be no awareness of where the Jets are at this point and what the situation is. And I'm someone who I was glad that Aaron Glenn told Aaron Rodgers, hey, fly over here from California. Yeah, you're fired. Now get the hell out. Because Aaron Rodgers embarrassed the organization. He didn't earn any respect for how he handled his time in New York. So I didn't have a problem with that. But that can't be the norm. This chaotic kind of flying by the seat of our pants way of doing business cannot be the norm. There are other people around the league, other people who the Jets are going to need to have a relationship with that should not be being handled in this way, where they're getting called about being interviewed for a defensive coordinator job and they're being told that, oh, actually, you know what? No, I'm calling the defense. What are we doing? Decide. What do you want to do? And Wink Martindale is not the kind of defensive coordinator that you're calling to say, hey, come be a figurehead. And I'm not sure if that's why this thing is breaking down. I have no idea. I'm just reading I'm reading what I'm seeing and then trying to compartmentalize it in some way. But Wink Martindale is a veteran defensive play caller, and he's good. I'm not going to tell you he's freaking Buddy Ryan, but he's good. I think if they hired him, I feel, okay, that's not a bad hire. I would be curious to see, how this thing shakes out. I hope that whatever his problems were with Brian Daboll were just a Brian Daboll thing, that he's not going to come in and cause headaches. But otherwise, the players seem to love Wink Martindale. I love how aggressive his defenses are. His defenses are multiple looks. They're very confusing for quarterbacks. Totally fine. Wink Martindale be defensive coordinator. I would think that would be a much better hire than Steve Wilkes last year. If last year was even and Wink Martindale and Steve Wilkes were available, I would have told you Wink Martindale 100 times out of 100 times. So it seems like you're upgrading. But now there's issues. We don't know why. And now Glenn may want to call the plays. I mean, what are we doing? To go this far down the road with somebody that's that respected around the league and then now be here, that's the part of this that's weird. If you wanted to call the plays, just come on and say, yo, I'm calling the plays next year. And I would have said, cool. Your head's on the line right now, so you might as well go down swinging, so to speak. Go down on your own sword. So I think, and again, I wasn't all that impressed with CEO head coach Aaron Glenn. In the past, I have been impressed with DC defensive play caller Aaron Glenn. Be that guy. Find somebody to help you with the CEO stuff, because that stuff you botched all of last year. ZJ Stewart here on 40 Days and 40 Nights, day 12 of this Odyssey, where we're doing 2 live streams per day. 1 in the morning, started today, 8 a.m. 1 in the evening, where we'll do another one at 6 p.m. And as I said before, shout out to everybody viewing on all different platforms. We're live in 3 different spots. We're live right now on YouTube, where you should subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. That's where we're streaming live there. Shout out to people on YouTube. We're also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Follow me on X there, EJ_Stewart. And also follow me on Instagram, where we're also streaming live on Instagram. Action EJs will find me on Instagram Live. And like I say every show, this show, if you can't watch because you're at the gym, like my fiance is right now. You're at the gym and you're working out and you can't watch something, or you're on the move, you're driving, you're traveling, you're on the subway, whatever the case may be. Totally fine. All these episodes get podcasted on our podcast channel. New Generation Podcast Network is where you'll search wherever you get your podcasts. And every episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights, including this episode, once this episode is done, will be posted to our podcast channel. So if you want to listen to yesterday's night 11 episode that included takes on Kid Cudi and Love Is Blind to go along with sports talk, that's the episode for you. If you want to hear my thoughts on Championship Sunday and the Super Bowl matchup that we have set currently with the Patriots taking on the Seattle Seahawks, that also is there on day number 11. So our early morning show from yesterday, we broke down everything from Championship Sunday and previewing early Super Bowl. My guy Eric in the chat saying, what's up, Eric? Good to hear from you. All those things are available on our podcast network. That's where you'll search New Generation Podcast Network on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of them, Google Play. Search New Generation Podcast Network. That's where you'll get the podcast. And by the way, if you can, it really helps us. Give us a 5-star review. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate it. If you can leave comments, leave a review, we definitely appreciate that as well. All that attention is good for us. So let's keep the ball rolling here. A couple more things I want to get to before we end up getting out of here. I did want to switch gears here and get some college football before we get back to the NFL, because there was a big game in college basketball last night, and I actually want to also have this show not be something that don't want to do Kyler Murray yet. We'll get to Kyler Murray in a second. I don't want the show also to kind of lose sight of college basketball. I love college hoops. If you've actually been paying attention and going through the archives of what we do here at New Generation Media, a big thing of what we do is obviously draft content. And in order to do draft content, you got to watch a hell of a lot of college basketball. And that's what I've always done. And I want college basketball also to be a big part of this show. And there was a monster game last night in Provo where number 1 Arizona, who was undefeated, they go into BYU and they beat them in the game. I'm reading this tweet, by the way. Before I get to this, I'll get to this. I can read these. It's fun doing this sometimes to do your intros and then actually see comments. Is always funny here. Eric quickly asking what about Wonder Man being released today? Wonder Man. Is it today? Oh, shoot, it is today. That's crazy. Yeah, time flies. Yeah, Wonder Man is today. So I'll probably have a review for that later on in the day. So I'll definitely be watching that today. So that's super, super dope. But no, it's a huge game last night in Arizona, in Provo, where Arizona outlasts number 13 BYU. They stay undefeated. AJ DeBonta, who is a prospective top 3 pick, plays for BYU in this game. I'll start first on the Arizona side of this. Arizona is a wagon, man. This was, they play obviously weird late nights. As I was working on Magnet Pro to start the year, it wasn't always easy to watch Arizona games. So now, obviously, that I'm not working early mornings. I said late nights, actually. Now that I'm not working early mornings and they play late nights, I'm able to watch more. This is definitely the best team in college basketball, and they're going to be a problem in March. And that's obviously goes without saying. They're undefeated. They're 21-0, I'm sorry. But I think what makes Arizona so dangerous this year is not only do they have excellent guard play and excellent freshmen, they also have upperclassmen that I think are able to kind of ease the blend between a team that's totally just relying on freshmen to win and a team that's relying on veteran guys. So, I mean, their backcourt last night, Braden Burries and Jaden Bradley. One is a freshman, Braden Burries, who very well could be a lottery pick. The other, Jaden Bradley, who's a true senior. Both combined for 56 points last night. Or 54 points, last night. Burries had 29. He was awesome to start this game. I think he had scored at one point 10 of their first 16 points. Jaden Bradley was an absolute closer down the stretch. But they have freshmen and a freshman guard and a senior guard, both dynamic, both able to take over a game. And then they also have great size in the front court. They have a 7-footer in Krivas, who is a shot blocker, rebounder, tough guy in the paint. Koa Pete, who also was a big recruit, and he was a big factor in this game because he took the assignment of guarding AJ DeBonta, and he did a really good job. Guarding DeBonta's a handful. It's going to take multiple people to guard him, and he did get in some foul trouble, but there were some key plays down the stretch where Koa Pete's defense was phenomenal. And, Tommy Lloyd, who, you guys may know, I'm a huge Gonzaga fan. He's a longtime Gonzaga assistant. He's obviously been in Arizona now for about 3 or 4 years. And it's actually pretty scary watching a team like Arizona, who has been able to amass the 5-star talent that they have with Koa Pete and Braden Burries, plus the veteran players like Jaden Bradley, and then the international players like Akrivas, like the other kid, Krachenkovov. It's a hard name to pronounce. Ivan Krachenkovov. Like, it's like what Gonzaga would be on steroids. They got the freshmen, they got the veteran, and they got the international guys. And it's like they've taken that Gonzaga model and applied it to a blue blood. And we haven't seen Arizona have tournament success yet. They've struggled in the tournament. They've been bounced out early, even though they had really talented teams. I feel like this might be the one that would worry me if you're looking at a team and say, okay, I want to get Arizona out of my bracket early this year because they're a team that typically flops. This is not the one I would bet against. They're athletic. They're long. They can shoot the ball. And a game last night that got a lot closer than it needed to be, and they didn't necessarily handle the end of the game well. Like, they were leading by double digits almost the entire game. They started the second half not so great. BYU was able to cut into the lead a little bit, but then they went ahead by 16, 17 points in this game in the second half. But then the last 2 or 3 minutes got really weird. They had some defensive breakdowns, and they had some turnovers. I thought the refereeing in this game was horrendous. Yes, I don't think Arizona necessarily handled inbound the ball, taking care of the ball, not limiting turnovers. All that was true. But they called an offensive foul on an inbounds play that seemed preposterous to me on Jaden Bradley. They didn't call the jump ball on a play that to me looked like an obvious foul. So the refs seemed like they wanted this game to be a Buffalo Wild Wings type game where they were like, oh, this game is getting a little out of hand. Let's find a way to make this interesting. And BYU find a way to make it interesting. But I was impressed with, again, the ability for Arizona to stay in that game, stay locked in, get those stops late on Tabonsa and on Robert Wright to win the game. So Arizona wins. They're going to remain undefeated. They're in a conference that is good, but it's going to be interesting to see where this loss comes for them, if they're going to have a loss. Because they're going to face Arizona State later in the week, and that's a rivalry game. They got Oklahoma State coming up. Then it's going to get tough in mid-February. They have a stretch of these 4 games in a row. At Kansas, home against Tech, home against BYU again, and then at Houston. They'll then have at Baylor, which Baylor's kind of down this year. But then they'll go home against Kansas, home against Iowa State. So Arizona has had a phenomenal season. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle the back half of this Big 12 schedule, because it's going to get real brutal kind of quick. They'll have these 2 games against Arizona State and Oklahoma State that they should win. But then once we get to February 9th, they have this big showdown against Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse. That is where things are going to get very interesting for the Wildcats. I'll say this on BYU. Watching BYU, I've watched them a ton. BYU, I think they're a good team. I don't see a Final Four team when I watch them play. AJ Debonsa is unreal. He didn't play well in this game. This was not the game to maybe hype up AJ Debonsa's, sing his praises in this one per se. He was 6 for 24. Arizona, I thought, did an excellent job in terms of throwing bodies at him. And this was a good learning experience for him, seeing a team that was able to throw that kind of length at him and be that aggressive on their hedging the screens, blitzing screens, not showing him multiple bodies, zoning up on him at certain points. They guarded him as if he's an NBA player, which he is. But I don't know if other teams are necessarily being able to employ that kind of strategy against him and have it work. So last night wasn't the greatest Debonsa game, but I said it to Kendall yesterday, and I'm going to say it again here. As much as I love Darren Peterson from Kansas, I think if I'm drafting number 1, I think AJ Debonsa is the guy I'm picking. And in fact, I'll call my shot early here and say that Debonsa is going to be the number 1 pick. Because this kind of reminds me a little bit of when Paolo Banchero went number 1. Because you'll remember going into the year, after hearing, early on, Paolo's going to be number 1. Then it became, oh no, there's other freshmen here, Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith. Like, these guys now are the guys that are considered number 1 pick, because they are more like the NBA type guys you see. They could play multiple positions. They could defend. They can block shots. They can shoot the 3 ball more consistently. They look more like the modern bigs, where Paolo Banchero, as talented as he was, seemed kind of like more like an isolation player that we've seen a bunch of times. And I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. I was one of those guys that was saying, yeah, I think Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren should be number one. I mean, I guess the jury's kind of... Jabari Smith definitely should have been number one. That's wrong. Chet, Paolo, I think we're going to be arguing that probably for years. I don't think it's totally one way or the other. Paolo obviously has been an all-star. Chet will be an all-star this year. Chet is a champion. Paolo isn't. Paolo's... It's kind of close, which is what it was then, you know? So it makes sense that was the case. I feel like that's what's happening now, where I think we're kind of trying to give us reasons why AJ DeBanza can't be number one, when to me it seems kind of clear. A 6'9" guy who handles like he handles, gets to the bucket the way he gets to the bucket, gets to the free throw line as much as he does, is a guy you don't pass up at number one. He just isn't. That kind of player, that profile, with his athleticism, he's a freak athlete also as well. That's not the guy you pass up. Not for a 6'5" shooting guard. You just don't. I like Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson is an absolute bucket. This is, to me, the best draft class I have seen since 2003. We had 3 freshmen, including AJ DeBanza, 3 freshmen on Saturday score 40 points. I think that was the first time that's ever happened. You had Keaton Vogler from Illinois. He went into Purdue, Mackey Arena, one of the toughest places to play, and put a 40 burger on them. He had 46. You had Kingston Flemings from Houston, the point guard. Going to Houston, it's a tough place to go to Houston as a freshman and say, I'm getting a bunch of shots. That's how Calvin Sampson simply runs his system. He's letting this guy go. He's like, this kid is different. He put 40 on Texas Tech on the road. And then AJ DeBanza in the Holy War against Utah, he also had a 40 burger over the weekend as well. So, and Wagler and Flemings are not seen as top 3 guys. These are guys you may be able to get at 6 or 8 or 10. Like, this class is deep. Caleb Wilson's a stud at Carolina. I mean, the guard at Arkansas is really good. Like, this is a great class. If you... To me, I know a lot of folks who maybe don't follow, college basketball will love the NBA. If you want to get familiarized with some future NBA stars and future NBA difference makers, this is the season to get locked into college basketball. We have about a month left or so before we really kick things off with March Madness. And to be honest, spoiler alert for your bracket, if you're one of those folks that say, I'm going to push the star freshman forward, that's usually the worst strategy you can do for March Madness. Those teams usually get bounced very early. So I don't wait till March Madness. Don't wait and say, I'm going to wait till March Madness to see some of these guys. Because unfortunately, some of these guys may get bounced early. That just seems to be how history has gone in the era of the one and done. But if you're, again, an NBA fan and you want to see what the future holds for the league next year, pay attention. Watch right now. These are the games. These are the teams you want to see. Again, you're going to see Arizona playing against Kansas in a couple weeks. I mentioned Arizona. Again, Burries is a freshman. Cole Pete is a freshman. These are guys that, again, are freshmen. All these, Burries is looked at as a top 15 pick. Pete is looked at as a first-round guy. All these guys are making impact on championship caliber teams. Again, Flemings is playing for Houston. Houston has a chance to win it all. We know Arizona has a chance to win it all. BYU, I don't think they're a Final Four team, but they hope that they can make a run here. There are some dogs. I didn't even mention, of course, Cameron Boozer from Duke. And if we're looking at teams who can challenge Arizona for the top spot right now, Arizona's been number one. They've been determined number one for a while now. That game against Duke, if they get to see Duke, I would love to see that. That would be the team I would look at and say, if there's anybody that maybe could give them a game and give them a real run, Duke would be one of the teams. Obviously, UConn's also really good. Michigan is really good. I also think this is a great college basketball season. That's another reason why I'm really excited about this, beyond just the NBA draft ramifications of this. This last year felt a little weird. Last year, and it ended up being kind of a weird year. It didn't feel like there were a bunch of teams that could win a title last year. It seemed like the teams that were there at the end were kind of the teams that we kind of thought would be there, This does not feel like that. Like the Houstons, the Floridas, the Auburns, we had 3 number 1 seeds. Those teams seemed far and away the best teams. And they were. This feels different. Because I'm looking at the top 25 right now. I'll pull it up for you guys so you can follow along with me as well. Arizona, UConn, Michigan, Duke. Nebraska's undefeated. I think you got to take them seriously now. I'm actually going to move my head to this side so you can see. You got to take them seriously now. Gonzaga, my Zags. I actually came into year expecting that this would be a down year for the Zags. I actually feel like, man, the way Gonzaga defends, and they're still, I know they're in the West Coast Conference, but they're still winning games despite the fact that they have not had Braden Huff, or Graham Ike, who he missed the last game as well, and they're still only 21-1. Surprisingly, considering they really didn't do a lot of damage in the transfer portal the way they normally do with getting the high-end guys, but the guys they brought in and played extremely well. Michigan State, I watched them against Oregon last week. They're a tough team. Iowa State is good. They had a bad loss to Kansas. Besides that, I've been impressed with them all year. Illinois is good. I mentioned Wagler's 46-point piece against Purdue. Purdue, I think, is still a team. I know they fell a lot in this draft. Purdue's a good team. I mentioned Houston. Texas Tech is tough. This is going to be a fun March. And I think there's some teams that are kind of lower here, too. I'm not writing off Florida at all. I'm not writing off Vanderbilt at all. And I'm not writing off Alabama at all. I think Alabama, I know they've hit a rough patch. But give me those guards in March Madness play, and I think you'll feel very good about your chances. And they may not have the highest seed, but they're also going to be a dangerous team. This is going to be a fun March Madness. This has already been a really fun college basketball season. And now as we really, really start to ramp up conference play, you're going to start to see some of these teams play against each other. The action this weekend was awesome. Last night in Provo was awesome. And I can't wait to see more of these awesome matchups here. But Arizona remains undefeated. They're 21-0. They beat BYU last night in a barn burner in Provo. Let's wrap it up here. Staying in Arizona, but going back to football and talking about one Kyler Murray, who I mentioned earlier in the show. There's a quarterback who it appears his trade value may be on the rise. That person is indeed Kyler Murray. So this comes from ESPN's Josh Weinfuss, who is the Arizona Cardinals reporter. He wrote a long article about how the Dante Moore decision to stay in college and not go to the NFL has actually now increased the value of potentially Kyler Murray. This is what was written here. Until Moore's announcement, quarterbacks were slated to go first and second overall. Indiana's national championship single caller Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. All along, it was unlikely the Cardinals would get a shot at either unless the Raiders or the Jets traded their picks, both of whom need quarterbacks. And traded with a team that didn't need a quarterback, or made such a head-scratching pick that either Mendoza or Moore was still on the board when the Cardinals got on the clock. The Cardinals, however, may have ended up as the biggest benefactor of Moore out of the picture because Kyler Murray's trade value increased according to sources. One less quarterback on the market makes desperation increase, said one source. An NFC source believes that the starting price for Murray is if Arizona is interested in trading him, which I can't imagine they're not, could start with a second-round pick. That source believes if the Cardinals can trade Murray, they will. The league source believes Murray's market starts with a third-round pick. So, second or third-round pick now is looking like what the Cardinals may be able to get for Kyler Murray, which they're probably singing and dancing in Glendale, if that's a possibility, because it looked like they couldn't get they weren't going to be able to get a box of footballs for Kyler Murray. And this is all coming from this report again from ESPN. Another detail as well, things just to know about this. So money is also going to be a factor in this because he has a fully guaranteed contract for next year. So regardless of whether he's on the roster, Murray will be set to earn $29 million, all of which has become fully guaranteed on the fifth day of the 2025 league year. That includes a base salary of $22 million and a $17 million roster bonus. Should Arizona trade him before June, the Cardinals' dead cap hit would be 17, with a cap savings of $35 million. According to Spotrac, if they trade him after June 1st, the Cardinals' dead cap hit would be $10 million, and their dead cap hit for 2027 would be $7 million, with cap savings of $42 million. So the Kyler Murray move, while his money is guaranteed, it feels like this is something that can happen. If you look at the situation with Tua's contract, that looks a lot more harrowing for anybody trying to actually make a trade. Because you're going to, basically, the Dolphins will have to take some crazy hit. But then you also then have to take on this ridiculous money for a guy who is very injury prone, and we're not sure is actually capable of being a winning quarterback at this point in the NFL. Kyler Murray, that seems a little different. He's making less than $30 million. If they have to eat $17 million on a cap hit, that's not crazy. If they're able to do it after June 1st, I think that's unlikely. I don't think they're going to wait. No team's going to wait that long, I think, for Kyler Murray. But if they're somehow able to wait till after June 1st, then the cap hit's only $10 million, and they can split it next year and make it $7 million. They can split it in half. So I think Kyler Murray is going to get traded, and I think part of the reason is because his contract is pretty good, and the Cardinals won't get hit too bad with a deadly cap hit. So I kind of see why a second or third round pick could be the price for Kyler Murray, and why if it becomes a bidding war among teams, that maybe someone bites the bullet and gives up a second round pick. What I will say is I just don't trust that Kyler Murray can be a winning quarterback in the NFL. That is the unfortunate other aspect of this. Yes, he's attainable. Yes, he's a better option than Tua Tagovailoa, but does he actually make sense in terms of if one of these teams that don't have a quarterback and won't be able to draft one, does he make sense for one of these teams to say, okay, we can't draft a quarterback, but we need to get somebody in here, so let's get Kyler Murray? I think it's going to depend on the team, but the likelihood that you're going to become a winner next year, that you found what the Colts thought they found in Daniel Jones, I don't quite see that. Looking at the AFC, I'm curious about whether or not a Miami-Arizona swap makes sense. Like, does it make sense for... I don't know. I mean, I don't think it does, right? Because I think Miami would have to attach maybe a first-round pick if that was going to happen to take on Tua Tagovailoa. Like, but they do something that aggressive where they say, okay, we'll attach first to get Kyler Murray in here because we want to win now. That seems crazy. So I don't know that. The Jets, I think, are definitely going to be potentially an option here. The Jets have an extra second-round pick. I think it's not an accident that this NFC source was throwing that out there, probably because they'd like to Jets give up one of those extra second-round picks that they got from the Cowboys and the Colts. So is that a possibility? Maybe. Going to the AFC North, I don't think anybody's going there unless you're talking about Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers is gone. South, are the Colts, are they going to move on from Daniel Jones coming off the torn Achilles? That's, I think, maybe a possibility. There are teams that need quarterbacks, man. There's a lot of them. The Raiders, obviously, they're going to have a draft guy, so they'll be fine. The rest of the AFC West is going to be set. NFC East, I think you're set with all the quarterbacks there. The North, I think you're set with all the quarterbacks there. I think J.J. McCarthy's going to get the chance to come back and be the starter. I expect there will be a veteran in the room that if he does fall apart that they can go to, but I don't think they're going to get someone as good as Kyler Murray via trade to back up J.J. McCarthy. I can't see that. I think the Falcons could be in play. I think that's a team that I think actually is actually realistic. They need a quarterback because of what happened with Michael Penix. They now have a new coach who I don't know if is going to be convinced that he wants to move forward. Michael Penix come off a torn ACL. So I can totally see the Falcons being aggressive. Now, they don't have picks because they traded some picks to the Rams. At least they traded their first-round picks to the Rams. Do they want to trade more draft capital considering their positioning? That would be a little suspect to me. I think the Saints aren't going to. I think they like Tyler Shuck. I don't think the Bucks are looking for a guy and not trading in the division. So to me, if you're eyeing what teams could be in this Kyler Murray sweepstakes, I think you're looking at Miami. Maybe they just cut Tua Tagovailoa and they try to trade him. Maybe he's not part of a swap. But I think you're looking at Miami. You're looking at the Jets. You're looking at potentially the Colts. And you're probably looking at those are and the Steelers. Those would be the teams I would eyeball and say, and the Falcons. Those would be the teams I would say, if Kyler Murray's going to get traded, I would say those are the teams that are there. The one with the highest upside to me, honestly, I think it's the Falcons. If the Falcons can get Kyler Murray and they decide, we're not going to go forward with Michael Penix because he's injury prone and he's an older young player, which is kind of a funny statement to say. We're going to move on and we're going to try to see if we can get a veteran here because we want to try to make the playoffs next year. If they decide to do that, I've said that I thought the Falcons have kind of been I know everyone's saying they've been a sleeping giant for years, but last year I actually thought I saw the signs of a team that could be good because now they actually have a defense. Because throughout this whole time we've been saying, oh, why isn't this offense better? Why is this offense more explosive? They have all these good players. I kept looking at it and saying they do not get sacks. They can't rush the passer. I love Jesse Bates. He's one of my favorite players in the league, and he's a stud. The back end is good, and it kind of masks maybe some issues they've had in the front seven, really. But their front seven was god awful. So they have fixed that. The rookies that they drafted, James Pierce was a monster this year. And it seemed like that trade with the Rams turned out to actually be a good trade. I don't know if they were going to draft a player as good as James Pierce in this draft with that pick. So I can't really kill them for that pick anymore. So I look at that and I'm like, that defense, you get a better quarterback. I do think Kyler Murray, while he has his issues, is better than Michael Penix at this point in time. Can I squint in the NFC South and see that they can get to, this year was 8 wins to get to the playoffs? Can they get to 9? Yeah, I could definitely see that. So that's probably the one with the most upside. I know when people will think about Pittsburgh, Kyler Murray doesn't seem like a Mike McCarthy guy. I don't see that fit. A true West Coast offense kind of coaching a guy who's 5'9". That doesn't quite make sense to me. So I would not expect that to happen. If I had to guess where he's going to be, I think he's either going to be a Jet or a Dolphin. That's just the gut I have. Those are the teams that are in a position where they either have to really, really convince themselves that they think Ty Simpson is him, which I just don't know if that's going to happen. And I don't know if, for those teams, it's worth drafting a first-round quarterback when those teams could very likely be bad next year. And the Jets particularly have all this draft capital to potentially get their quarterback next year. I don't know if it makes sense for them to do that. They may prefer to get a veteran. But I think if you're especially the Jets, I don't think they're going to do the Justin Fields thing again. Like, I don't think they're going to do the let's take a guy who's had no track record of like real, like sustained success, and let's see if like we can turn him around. Kind of like what they saw with like Sam Darnold going to Minnesota, which is what they said they kind of saw as like a vision for Justin Fields. Could not have gone more wrong. Kyler Murray has a little bit more proof of concept that he could be productive. Now, he has leadership issues. He has character issues. He has maturity issues, it seems. But beggars can't be choosers is the saying that they say. And I would look at that and say, I think if you're the Jets, who else are you going to go for? All these teams, by the way, are also going to be in play for someone like Malik Willis. So what Malik Willis's market is going to be a key. Mac Jones and his market is also going to be. There's going to be multiple factors here. There's going to be multiple people here. There are guys out there, but the names aren't all that sexy and that exciting. Kirk Cousins still wants to play. I'm not quite sure why, but he seems like he still wants to play. So Kirk Cousins is going to be out there too. So of the names that are out there, I actually like Malik Willis. He'd probably be my favorite guy of the list. But Kyler's and Malik are probably the top guys, you would say, of those names, I think. So I think that those are the spots you're looking at as potential fits. Again, there are some wild cards here. Is Minnesota going to be a place? I actually didn't mention Cleveland. The only reason why I didn't mention Cleveland was because I don't know what's happening. I don't know who their head coach is. They have Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if they're throwing another like Molotov cocktail into the QB room by adding Kyler Murray. That seems wild to me. But who knows what the Browns will do. They are as unpredictable and unreasonable as the New York Jets. So they are absolutely a wild card. Could they decide, hey, you know what? Let's just throw in Kyler Murray. Let's see him and Shedeur Sanders could stream playing video games together. I don't know. Could that happen? Yeah. Would it be smart? I don't think it's the greatest idea. But it's the Cleveland Browns, so we'll see. But Kyler Murray, a guy who I thought they'd have to give away in order to get rid of him or potentially cut him. As of today, we sit here in January 27th, the belief being that a trade could be possible, and they actually, with the Cardinals, may get some value out of that. So maybe the Cardinals lucking out in the end because they Dante Moore from Oregon decided to stay in the NFL draft. That's going to do it, man, for this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, greatly appreciate y'all for rocking with me this early Tuesday morning. Of course, we do these live streams every weekday, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 6 p.m., streaming live right now on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Subscribe, like this video, get in the comment section. Do everything you got to do to give us support, man. All of it helps. We greatly appreciate it. So make sure you're doing that. Again, New Generation Media is where we're on YouTube. If you are also watching us on X, shout out to people watching us on X. I know there's several people on X watching us. Appreciate y'all. X, you can follow me, EJ_Stewart there. The episode obviously also stays on there as well if you want to watch it on X. And I'm also streaming on Instagram, Action EJ, streaming live on IG Live. Also be sure to follow me on TikTok, Action EJ as well. And like I said before, make sure you follow the channel's podcast network, New Generation Podcast Network. That is our channel on all streaming platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. This episode, along with several other episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights are all up there. So if you want to go back and listen to this one, it will be up there probably within the next few hours or so. So, again, greatly appreciate all the support. You guys are the best. That's going to do it for this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day this Tuesday. We'll be back at 6 p.m. on this Tuesday. So, second live stream coming up later. We'll see what fun stuff we get into. I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff to talk about. So I can't wait. I appreciate you guys always. This is EJ Stewart again. I'll catch y'all a little bit.